Trek says this is just the beginning. They're committed to seeking out and using more sustainable materials wherever possible, so expect to continue to see this trend as new apparel is introduced. Visit trekbikes.com to learn more. And thank you so much to Trek for sponsoring this episode.
Does this mean Trek will move away from Santini and just start wearing their own stuff?
I don't know, but that would be pretty cool. I mean, I think, but you would imagine, like, kind of like Canyon SRAM, Canyon has their own line of apparel now that the team would want to, be supported by Trek as much as they can. But I think that they've got a pretty long relationship with Santini.
But it's like the perfect marketing tool to have your men's and women's team riding kit you make.
Absolutely. Pretty cool stuff from them. I mean, a lot of what they've done in the last couple years is moving the company into a lot more sustainable. And I know all of us here are pretty keen for the planet to keep turning the way that it has been. So
that would be ideal if possible.
That would be nice.
Yeah.
Anyway, we've got a pretty epic race to talk about today. I'm not gonna lie, I never really understood the draw of Paris-Roubaix until like last year. So, but all of a sudden it's like my favorite race on the calendar, and the race over the weekend was incredible. We'll start with a slight rundown of what happened, and I do have 2 notes today because I have not memorized the course like I have for Flanders and Amstel Gold.
Why are you slacking off, Abby?
I really dropped the ball.
It's not like there wasn't like a million different things that happened throughout the race.
Yeah, you have one job. Gosh.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry to let you all down. Anyway, so the race started off with 5-person move up the road that ended up before the first sector of cobbles on the first sector of cobbles, it blew apart, and 2 of the riders went back to the peloton, including American Katie Klaus, who's an incredible cyclocross racer, and finished last on the day, but finished, so that's pretty cool. Anyway, so going into the first sector of cobbles, Trek Segafredo really took the bull by the horns, for lack of a better expression. I said last week that Ellen Van Dijk, not great at handling or positioning, and I think she took it personally. Although, talking to her before the race, she did say that her positioning was something that she really needed to work on. We'll get into that. So in the first sector of cobbles, they really blew the race to pieces, and once Ellen got a flat a little while later, it kind of came back together and the group regrouped a little bit, but there was an attack by Lotte Kopecky with 53-ish kilometers to go on this is where I took notes. Bercy. See, my notes are useless because I can't speak French, so it sounds terrible anyway. It was sector 6.
That's
or 13, depending if you're counting down or up. 6 sectors into the race. Lotte Kopecky kind of threw down on one of the cobbled sectors, and she took Marta Bastianelli with her. Eventually, Lucinda Brand caught up with them. The 3 of them worked together 20-ish K, 19, 18 K. But that eventually got brought back, and pretty immediately after that, Elisa Longo Borghini attacked on the double sector, the sector that's kind of like, it's 2 sectors of cobbles, but there's a little bit of road in between. So if you look on the Paris-Roubaix official site, it's sector 8, as in 8 to go. Elisa Longo Borghini attacked. She was kind of followed by Chantal Vanderbroek Black and Emma Norsgaard, but they were not able to get on her wheel in time, and she rode away. A classic Elisa Longo Borghini move that I don't think any of us expected to see on Saturday. She rode all the way to the finish. There was a chasing group of Chantal Vanderbroek Black, Lotte Kopecky, Ellen Van Dijk, Lucinda Brand, Marta Cavalli, Flirty Mackay, and Elise Shabby that rode into the velodrome together. Kopecky sprinted for 2nd, Brand for 3rd, and that was the race. And Trek Segafredo kept the Paris-Roubaix cobble within the family.
Way to start.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
What I couldn't remember is the names of the cobbled sectors, but I can't say them anyway, so I don't think it matters.
The sectors make it easier though, right?
Yeah.
Amy, where were you standing on the day?
Yeah, we went to a few different places. We went to the first sector, Hornig or whatever it's called, where Lizzie Deignan attacked last year. And then we went to another one. What's it called? Hang on a sec. We went to one, I think, hang on. Is it Mons and Pavel? Is that?
That's one of the big ones. So the men have 3 five-star cobbled sectors, and the women have 2, Mons and Pavel and the Carrefour de Labre.
I think it was that one because it was the one where like the cobbles are, well, the road is like banked, like almost like, and you could tell why like everyone was like slipping and sliding around last year in the mud because the road is like so uneven. There's like it's like a proper farm track with like where it peaks in the middle of the road, and but then with cobbles are like massive, the size of Johnny's head. So
Do not bring your regular podcast jokes onto this podcast.
I'm sorry, but I brought Debbie to the regular ones. It's only fair.
That's true. Everyone who's been clamoring for Debbie to come back, if you heard the regular podcast over the weekend, Debbie was back in full force.
She was. This morning, Debbie is, she's sleeping because it's 8:30 in the morning. I have a coffee instead of a leffe, so. Anyway, yeah, so I'm pretty sure it was that one, anyway, that we went to. I remember eating a lot of dust.
Yeah, I mean,
Not
the
on
weather,
purpose.
the weather like really couldn't have been any different this year to how it was last year. Last year, obviously, it rained before and it was sloppy. It was just really an epic first ever Paris-Roubaix Femme, but this was dry. There was a chance of rain on Friday, the day before the race, but it did not rain. It was hot and dry, and that caused a lot of punctures within the peloton. There's a lot of issues. There was still some crashes, but obviously not nearly as many as last year, with the, like Amy just said, the embankments on the sides of the cobbles and everything. But yeah, the weather was totally different. What should we talk about first? Should we talk about Elise Longoborghini first and Trek? How should we do this? I feel like we should talk about Elise Longoborghini first because she really
Trek in
was.
general.
Oh man, Trek was incredible. I mean, they really, last year they won the race. Lizzie Deignan attacked on the first sector of cobbles, but was it really? We didn't get to see it, so we don't know if it was really an attack or she just came into the cobbled sector first and whoever was on her wheel couldn't hold it. And because of the conditions, it was really hard for any chasing to happen. And once you hit the first sector of cobbles, the cobbles come like fast and furious. Like they're one after another. There's barely enough road in between each cobbled sector to chase. There's like a couple longer bits, but it's not enough to kind of organize a chase. And so when she went on that first sector last year, it was kind of race over, and it was still an incredible race to watch. But this year was completely different in that there was an attack that went with 3 riders that went into the race as favorites. That I think I was shocked when that came back together. But we'll get to that. And Trek they were present all day. There was one point where it looked like their race had fallen apart. I mean, they started the day on the front foot with Ellen going into the first couple sectors of cobbles first, and her power is just so incredible that she was able to whittle the peloton down a little bit, which I think is ideal for Trek. They had a lot of riders sitting near the front of the peloton, and so it would have been easier for them to position going into the later sector of cobbles as the race got harder. But then on the third sector, Ellen got a front flat. Chloe Hosking crashed really hard on the side of the road. And pretty soon after that, Elisa Balsamo got a flat. And then disqualified, which we'll talk about. So for a minute there, it looked like the race started really well for them and then just completely fell apart. But it wasn't the case. I mean, Elisa Longoborghini's we've talked about it, she's not been great this year. She's been suffering from illness. Her form hasn't, even before she got sick, her form wasn't ideal. And she took the week off, didn't race Amstel Gold, didn't race Brabantse Pijl, and came back just flying. I mean, that was such an incredible ride by her. It was, I think for her, like, her spring was really disappointing. For Trek, the spring has been, I mean, not disappointing because Balsamo's won 3 World Tour races, but still in the really hard races, Strade Bianche and Flanders, they've kind of fallen short, and especially Flanders, like, they weren't even part of the race really. But for them to come into Paris-Roubaix like they did and take first and third on the day, with Brand taking third, this is, I mean, I think it's just like, just an incredible performance by Trek all around.
I think they just did really well to keep pivoting with the bad luck that they were having through the day, which just shows us that their communication is really good. They must have been on their radios a lot, because Elisa attacked at the perfect moment, but I think that was because that they were given that information that probably their leader, Balsamo, was no longer in the race, and she just capitalized perfectly on a couple of attacks from other people in the right moment, and that was the race. But yeah, I think before then they looked like they were talking, they were using their radios. They probably, as a team, like as a top team, probably had some of the worst luck, and they had the best outcomes. And maybe SD Works was not talking enough, or yeah. We'll get into that break of 3 that you mentioned, because for me that was where SD Works lost the race. But yeah, I just thought that Trek really nailed their communication. I think that was their key to success.
We need to talk about the sticky bottle. Do we think it was a fair call?
I mean, that she was disqualified?
Yeah.
She's the world champion, so there's more cameras on her than most people in the race. I mean, we saw the sticky bottle. She was just hanging on for a really long time, and that happens in races a lot, and it doesn't always get captured on video, but it did, and it didn't look good for her or for the team.
I think what clinched it was that they passed other riders as well.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say too. Like, it's just a big no-no to pass riders that are chasing as well. So I think it was equal parts her fault and the director's fault. I think they need to share the blame for that one.
I think they would have been panicking at that point. I mean, at that point, their star rider, Balsamo, is off the back. They don't know how Elisa Longo Borghini is going to be riding, like, at the pointy end of the race yet. Ellen had a flat and was working her way back into that group. Like, at that point, everything was falling apart for them. So it was a call that was made in the heat of the moment. And I think Johnny was pretty close to the Trek team bus after the race ended and heard Balsamo and Ina Dutenberg, the director, chatting after the race. And Balsamo was really, really upset. Which, I mean, stuff like this in the men's peloton, like, this will follow you for your whole career. I don't think that's the case for this situation, because Trek had a bigger storyline coming out of the day, but had they not won the race, like, this would have been the defining moment for them.
I felt so bad for her. Like, I think it was the right call. I agree with you, Abby, but I felt so bad for her because I don't know her personally, but she seems like a really nice person and a very gracious athlete and winner. So I know, like, it would have been devastating for most people in that situation, but I think she races pretty fairly. Like, she's definitely not your old school dirty Italian rider. Like, I just think it was a bad moment, and you're right, like, they were panicking. That was the peak of the race. It's like, it was just a bad decision. So I hope that she doesn't have to wear that for a long time. And yeah, totally right too. Luckily they had a better story for the day.
I don't think we should hold it against her, for sure.
No way.
I've honestly already forgotten that storyline, to be perfectly honest. I mean, how many riders have we seen take sticky bottles before? I think that was a conversation on one of the commentary teams, maybe in Dutch, but yeah, the fact that she was a world champion, she had a bit more attention on her. And there's a difference to what happened there and being in a climbing race and then seeing a bunch of, well, like in the Giro, riders come past you when you've been dropped on team cars holding on. that happens. So I definitely don't hold it against her. I don't think anyone will. It's,
Yeah.
like you said, equal parts the director and the writer, and I'm sure in that moment there would have been, yeah, pushing her to hold on a little bit.
Hmm.
But I do wonder, I know that, yeah, you probably know more, Elise, Abby, but Elisa had been targeting Paris-Roubaix, even though she'd had a pretty average spring for her with everything that's gone on. If Balsamo had stayed in the race, like, would they have given her the opportunity to go? I still think they would have.
I think so. I think Trek went into this race maybe with their focus on Balsamo, but I think they really went in with a let's throw everything at it and whatever sticks kind of approach. And that's when Longo Borghini attacked, she said that it wasn't the plan at all for her to attack at that point. It was pure instinct. She just felt in that moment that it was a great moment to attack, and that's why she went. And she does that, Longo Borghini, and sometimes it works, and sometimes it works really well. Like we saw that in Trofeo Alfredo Binda last year, and sometimes it doesn't work. And this time it just worked really well. And she came into the season with a new coach. She was building up over the spring for the Ardennes races. Before, she was a little bit worried about her form just because when you aren't riding well in those early season races, it can really knock your confidence. And especially Longo Borghini, she was, in my opinion, one of the best riders of the year last year, just consistently over the entire season. I mean, to win World Tour races in the beginning of the year, to get third at the Olympic road race, and then third at Paris-Roubaix in October is a pretty impressive season from somebody. And she was really, I think, worried about her form coming into the later part of the spring, but this was the plan. The plan was the Ardennes. And I think with the form that she showed on Saturday, going into Flèche Wallonne on Wednesday and Liège-Bastogne-Liège, I mean, she's a favorite for those two races. I didn't even put her on my list of favorites for this race. I had not. I think on GCN, Dan Lloyd maybe picked her for the win, or maybe it was Adam, and I was like, "You're nuts! Like, there's no way." But she wasn't on my radar at all for this race, and I'm just so glad that she's one of my favorite riders because of the way that she races.
Anymore, because you're just coming into a race like, hope, you know, you just have no expectations of yourself, so you often do really well. And I think that's a really powerful lesson for so many athletes that we all experience at one time or another. But for young riders, it's good to see that, like, having injuries, having illnesses, it's actually not the worst thing. It can often be really helpful because it just puts things into perspective, or you freshen up, which is a huge thing. I think a lot of athletes are just more fatigued than they realize. So yeah, Lauren, you've probably had a day like that where you just rode a lot better than you thought you would because you had no pressure on yourself.
Actually, that reminds me, if we're going to reminisce, the day I broke my collarbone in Drenthe. So
yeah, I was thinking of that day.
yeah, the team said before that race to me, like, we just want you going in every move, and we just want you to prove yourself to us, because I've been okay that spring, but they wanted more from me, and there wasn't any expectation to win. So I was just like, I'm just going to go in literally every move. And I think I was in every move, and then finally the winning move went, and I was there, and then I just raced on pure instinct, back to basics. No one in my ear telling me what to do. You know, once that break had formed, the race car came up, and basically the director's like, just, I want to see you racing like you did 4 years ago when we signed you. I'm like, okay. So yeah, it was one of those days. And so with Eliza, I think we were chatting on the group chat while you were commentating, Gracie, but I don't know, I had this feeling she was going to pull it off, even though it was 32k to go or something, because like we see many times in this race, it's not a normal chase, it's not a normal sprint at the end of such a hard race. And I think once you get that gap, And as the rider, like, you've got that self-belief within yourself. She just started pulling away, and the chase behind just, yeah, you don't have the same legs anymore. It doesn't matter who's chasing, even if it is Chantal van der Broek Black, for example, who was one of my picks for the day.
And she really had no pressure because she wasn't even supposed to race. She told the team she didn't want to race because she didn't think that she was going to be good enough. And so she had probably the least amount of pressure from of the entire team on her. They just wanted her to be there, really. So and she, I think when she went, like, she just went all in. There was no hesitation. She didn't hold anything back at all, which is what she does.
And I think knowing as well, like, we were talking about the bad luck with Trek, but Lucinda was on a good day. This is a race who suits her, and if she had in her ear, like, I'm just going to go full gas, we're going to get caught, so be it. Ellen and Lucinda are behind me. Lucinda, on a day like yesterday, could potentially win from that group behind if Eliza had. So you're in a safe situation in terms of, it doesn't matter what happens, you just go all in, full gas. And if you get brought back, well, I have two teammates, and Eliza is always going to have that little bit of extra energy to then contribute to the finale. So.
And Lucinda and Ellen both looked really, really strong on Saturday as well. Lucinda was in, I think we should talk about this 3-person break and talk about SD Works, because there was that 3-person move that was about 53-ish kilometers to go. That was, Kopecky started the move, which I'm going to just go ahead and say was a bad call that far out. And she took Marta Bastianelli, who's had just a ripper spring, with her, and then Brand worked her way up to them and was eventually there. And Kopecky said after the race that actually the reason that she pulled the plug on that group was because Brand wasn't committing to working with the group. But between the three of them, I mean, if that group had gone to the velodrome, Kopecky takes it. Like, Brand is incredible, but she can't out-sprint Kopecky. So that was a really interesting development, like, in that Trek was on the front foot already. They had someone in that move, a really strong rider in that move. But SD Works, I don't know what they were doing. It's cool to me that Kopecky went in terms of a viewer watching the race and the excitement of having the Belgian national champion up the road with like 50 kilometers to go. But they really went into this race as the out-and-out favorite. Like, they had Majerus, they had Chantal van der Broek Black, who's riding super well. They had Kopecky, who won Flanders. They went into the race, for me, the team to beat, and they did better than they did last year. The top result they had last year was Chantal in 10th, but to walk away with second, I think, is kind of a disappointment for them, which is wild, because a year ago you'd say, especially if it was Kopecky, like, she's progressed so much as a rider in the last 2 years. But still, I feel like, I don't know, I didn't understand their tactics.
I think they definitely burned themselves a bit too early, and they were driving the front on some of those earlier sectors, and they were whittling down the peloton, but they weren't probably doing the damage that they were intending to do. And then when Lotte got off the front with those other two riders, Bastianelli and Brand, it looked to me like she was actually the first one to not ride hard, not Brand. So I need to go back and rewatch it to really remember it. But I remember in commentary going, why is she sitting up when she was the one that drove it to get this group away in the first place?
Well, I wonder if she was just second guessing it, and she was feeling that Brand wasn't working, and that's why she sat up. Because you're right, she sat up first. She was the first one to kind of be like, eh. So I wonder if Brand, that we couldn't see, that she was soft pedaling through a little bit, or if Kopecky just didn't have the the confidence to be like, okay, I'm gonna just keep this going.
Yeah, I think SD Works tried to be on the front foot from the bit too early, and then suddenly they were on the back foot. And then I think, so that was like the first time that they probably made a big mistake, because Kopecky could have won probably from that group, even if she pulled the most turns. There's a big question mark there, but for argument's sake. And then I think the second mistake was just driving it but not having a clear plan. Like there was a couple of points where Chantal was driving it on the cobbles, but Christine was driving it on the dirt, and they were almost just drag racing and wasting one of them when they could have just, one person could have dropped the wheel or made it difficult for other people, instead that they were only hurting each other. And then the third major mistake was when Cicchini went with Emma Norsgaard when Elisa attacked, and I hate to say it, but it looked like she didn't try as hard as she could to get across, and she just sat up, and that was the race over.
I think SD Works were missing Marlon Russo and the engine that she's got.
I do not understand why they didn't. She apparently, like, nothing's wrong. She's just on holiday. She took the weekend off.
I mean, fair play. She deserves a holiday, but could she not have waited a week?
Oh, it was a few days, because the other race was just on Wednesday.
I don't understand that call.
I agree, and we said it before, that was a big mistake, because she has the ability, like Ellen Van Dyke, to just drive it on the front and still be there at the end. You know, she can be that person towing riders, teammates back. And yeah, Cicchini, I don't think, she's been okay this spring, but she doesn't quite have the legs, for lack of a better word. So when I saw that going, I was like, no, that's the wrong SD Works rider right now. Because if there was one rider who maybe could have done it, it would have been Chantal.
For sure.
So
yeah, I think I said Chantal in my race breakdown, but it was Cicchini.
yeah.
But there was other riders on the roster that we just, for a race that's this big, yeah, I was shocked that they didn't tap Rusa, because like you were saying, Gracie, they were too keen in the beginning, but so was Ellen. But not everyone is
sure.
Ellen Van Dyke.
And also, for Ellen's sake, like you said, if she's been having some issues with confidence, with positioning, she is a rider who can do that, can sit at the front, and that is the safest place to be, is on the front, setting your own tempo, riding the line that you want to ride. And it got her really deep in the race. If she had sat at the back like she has been doing, she never would have, ended up there, and would have been more susceptible to crashing and all that sort of stuff. So,
but Rusa could have matched that effort by Ellen.
100%. And I think she is riding more confidently too. So
I said this on, say it, whisper it, the main podcast. That
so different. She looks way more powerful in black. But someone for a moment in a race had been confused and was like, I thought it was Ellen, and I thought that was a funny story. I told my DS at the end of the race because I thought it was such a great story to be thought of as Ellen Van Dyke, and he said in his very thick German accent, "You are not Ellen Van Dyke."
Ah.
Yeah, that put me in my place.
I always got compared to Ali Stalker, which I was like, that's the highest of compliments that you could ever have.
Did you attack from the gun?
Yes. Attacked too early.
no one ever compared me to a World Tour rider.
But yeah, I wonder, so I got a message from somebody who listens to the podcast about if we were going to talk about how SD works in a couple of the races, and I think that we're only like hard on them because they are such an incredible team, how they've had some very, very questionable tactics. Is this the point where we look at Anna van der Breggen as the new director and question how she's directing the team? Something that I'm very hesitant to do because I love her. But you would, in this situation, you would look at how the team has gone into a couple of these races with maybe, I don't know, being too confident, not committing to one rider, not committing to two riders, like whatever has gone wrong tactically for them, it is the director's call what the plan is. And Anna is their new director. And is it growing pains for her? Is that what's happening right now?
Oof.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
That's on the flip side of the coin. You could say, is it also because she's not present anymore as a rider?
Definitely, yeah.
Like, I know for a fact, like, Trek has missed having Lizzie Deignan around. She's been a huge part of that team, Lizzie, and just her presence, from what I've heard, is really important in the team dynamics and just how they function. And we've chatted about Canyon SRAM when they don't have, I think when actually Tiff isn't there, sometimes things fall apart.
Yeah, I wonder if it's less growing pains from Anna as a director in the car than having her as a voice on the road. It's obviously way different to be making calls from the car versus as the captain on the road. And so I wonder if that's where the misinformation is happening, and that's where the tactics are kind of falling apart, and it's has nothing to do with whether or not Anna's a good director, because I think it would be hard not to be when you have the amount of experience that she has, but more that maybe there's riders on the team that aren't picking up that captain on the road role that Anna would have filled, and the team is kind of missing that a little bit, which is interesting because you'd think it would be Chantal with the amount of experience that she has.
But I guess Gracie can speak to this. Experience doesn't always translate to being a leader.
Very true.
In that sort of captain's sort of, you could have 20 years, but some people just don't have it. And then you have riders who've been riding for maybe 3 or 4 years and are quite young, but already have that quality, that leadership quality. And
sometimes worse riders, like riders that were not great in their careers, are actually better directors, I've found.
Yeah, and that's another point to add here is if you are a world champion athlete, you're not going to make a world champion coach or director. It doesn't necessarily always translate.
To put it simply, SD Works have some really great talented riders, but they can never do the same tactics as when they had Anna on the team, because she just could do things that no one else could do.
There you go.
And so she's not necessarily able to give the same advice of what she would do in a race to someone like Chantal, because they're just different riders. And apart from Demi, I don't think there's anyone on their team could ever ride the same tactics that Anna could back when she was in her peak. So I was really interested from the start of the year to see how she would go as a director. But, you just don't know what's going on behind those closed doors. I'm sure that she's not doing it on her own. They've got the other directors there to help her. And it would be a big shift regardless of whether she's going to be a good director or not. So they had questionable tactics before she was a director. I'm going to put that out there.
They could just pull it off because they had Anna to pick it up.
The Anna card.
Yeah.
So I really just don't think it's anything to do with her as a director. I think it's just a team issue that they've had for a long time, and it plays out well. Sometimes they win a race with questionable tactics, and sometimes they don't, and that's where we pick it apart more. But it happens when they win races too, I think. When you're like, wow, what the hell were they doing? But it worked.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree.
Yeah, we do have high hopes for them. So
we do. I mean, that's the thing about like Trek and SD Works is they're probably the two best teams in the world, and well, they are the two best teams in the world, and that's why when they get things wrong, we're way more critical of them than we are of other teams. I mean, we're hard on other teams too, but like when you have the riders that you and the support that you have on SD Works and Trek, which actually I wonder if we should. Well, I don't even know if we should dive into tech, because I wonder like how much the bikes made a difference. I mean, Trek obviously they have their pick of type of bikes, and they have a specific bike just for this race, the Demane, and they had new Demanes that have not yet been released that they were racing on this weekend. And I wonder how much of a difference that makes in a race like this, because obviously this is the only time that they ever race anything as challenging as this. And you had, I mean, I thought it was interesting that Chantal was on the Tarmac SL7 and Christine Majerus was on the Roubaix for Specialized. And then the whole Trek team rode the Demane. I think it would make a huge difference, especially if you're looking at them and then you're looking at, say, Canyon. Amazing bikes, like, don't get me wrong, but they have less options when it comes to a race like Paris-Roubaix.
Look, I am not a techie person, which is shameful after how long I've been in the sport. So I can't comment at all. But my partner did ask if we'd be talking about what was going around in the news before Paris-Roubaix, something to do with adjusting tire pressure on the fly. Like,
Yeah.
That was DSM, but the women were never going to get that, I don't think. Well, indeed. And then the men didn't trust it anyway because cycling hates change. And to be honest, it sounded a bit rogue. I know nothing about tech either. It sends me to sleep. Sorry, Ronan. But yeah.
Thankfully, there is a podcast dedicated to that. So.
Yes.
True.
Which none of us are on.
Alert.
And there's a reason for that.
I think it does, yeah, even with our limited knowledge of tech, I feel like this is the one instance where you can be like, yeah, I think that this would make a difference.
Bikes or
the bikes, just like the handling of the bikes over the cobbles, the stiffness, I mean, just because the cobbles are so challenging and they only do this once a year. And like exactly the same as last year, Trek is the team that does the most homework, that does the most recons, that does the most effort in the equipment side, and other teams go into the race with the exact same bikes that they use all year long. And I think that it does say a lot to the team and the support that the team has and how much Trek is putting into the team as well, that they have that option of having this like they have an entire fleet of bikes for one day of races. And so the fact that they won it is just like the icing on the cake, I feel like, or validates all of the effort that they put in.
Yeah. Well, they didn't get a podium with the men, so
they had a really bad day for the
yeah.
men.
Yeah, they did.
Like, it was.
I must admit, I only watched the last 30k of the men's race. I went for a bike ride. It was very nice.
Oh, it looked really, really nice. Yeah, they had. I mean, they were on the back foot from the very beginning for the men. They used up all of their good vibes on Saturday.
Can we do some shout outs? So for me, I was really impressed with Marta Cavalli. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah,
But
me
to go
too. She
win-
was one of my shout outs.
Yeah, freaking win Amstel Gold, tiny little climber, up there in that finishing group. I was just like blown away by her ride.
And she got a flat, like,
Yeah.
in the middle of the race and was able to come back from that.
And then I would like to shout out Aussies like Gracie. I thought Tiff rode a good race. Chloe was doing great work for Trek before she had that unfortunate crash. I'm not sure how she is, but it looked like she did a good tumble, the way that we're taught to crash.
Made it to the finish. She looks alright.
Okay, that's good.
It was a soft landing, into the dirt and grass.
In the fields.
Yeah.
I'm glad she's okay because I think that was a very memeable crash. So
Yes.
It's definitely true. I want to shout out Elise Shabby because I feel like she is such an incredible climber. She's pretty new to the sport, and for her to finish fourth is really, really impressive. I mean, it's not, you wouldn't really consider a race like Paris-Roubaix within her skill set, but it was an impressive ride by her, and she was the top Canyon SRAM rider on the day. And when I saw her come across, I didn't even it didn't click for me that she was in that break or in that chasing group. It was only when I saw the results that I was like, oh, that was Shabby. Of course. And I think that for Canyon SRAM, going into the next couple of races where Kasia will be a favorite for Flèche Wallonne and for Liège-Bastogne-Liège, we are super critical of them and their tactics, but having a rider like Shabby who's like riding fourth at Paris-Roubaix, obviously she's riding very well, bodes well for the team for the upcoming races.
Yeah, I think they'll have some strength this year in those races. They're going to have Soraya Paladin as well. So they're at least going to have Kasia, Soraya, and Elise up there in the front.
You know, Elise in fourth for me, like, I wouldn't have put her as a favourite or somebody to come in the top 10 before the race, maybe, but when I saw her, that she came fourth, I was kind of a bit like, oh, okay, that figures, because she is this, like, kind of, again, like a powerful, she's a time trialist, right? So it's like, she just has the ability to just, like, power over the cobbles, which, like, is the kind of rider that this race suits. And we know she's, like, super strong, but she's just usually working for other riders. And she's really skilled. Like, if you watch her descend, I know it's not quite the same, but yeah, she's obviously got it. Also, 5 for Georgie.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, she was also
great.
really
She's been
good.
fantastic this year.
Mm-hmm.
Flirty Mackay also. Flirty Mackay had a really good ride. I mean, for her, because I think that they would have been riding for Lorena, would be my assumption, who had some bad luck, and I think I can't remember if she crashed or flatted, but then definitely like was not really handling the cobbles super well. But I think what we can take away from looking at the top 10 is we still have no idea what who this race actually suits.
It's a special race, and I think we're just going to look forward to it every year because it just throws up so much drama.
100%.
And I'll do one more shout out, which was Tanya Arath. She was the Zwift Academy winner from 2017, and she was awesome in that breakaway. She was the last one before the peloton swallowed her up, and it's an event that was sponsored by Zwift. So I think that was a really awesome example, because I think when Zwift Academy first started, there was so many people questioning whether riders had the skill to be out on the road after coming from a virtual platform. And like Roubaix is arguably the most technical race ever in road cycling. So I think she did a great job.
I spoke to her at the finish and asked her about being in that break, and she said that, and where have we heard this before? She said she wanted to be out front because she didn't want to be in the peloton, because she had a really bad crash at the end of last year in the women's tour, and she's like just coming back from that, so I think she's a bit nervous. So yeah, she basically did a Kiesenhofer there, just not quite as
I think a lot of people wanted to be in front of the peloton.
Looking at Ellen Van Dyke has years and years and years of experience, and I guarantee she didn't want to be in the peloton on the cobbles either.
Yep.
I don't understand how looking at those cobbles, honestly, and like this is freewheeling, so maybe I can say this, but the thing I was thinking about is like your saddle bashing around.
Oh my god! And did you see Elisa Balsamo when she hit that pothole? And I was just like,
no.
That would not be a pleasant. That would no.
That's all I could think about. I was like, oh no.
Yeah.
I was gonna say something, but it wasn't.
No, I think this race is a really special race, and I feel like I didn't appreciate it before there was a women's edition, because obviously I like women's racing more than men's. But we've had 2 years. We've had 2 years of just incredible bike racing with very unexpected winners, or slightly unexpected winners in Lizzie's case, where we look at riders like, we think we can predict what's going to happen. We look at riders like Ellen and Chantal and say, okay, these are the favorites, but clearly the race can throw way more at us, and it's just awesome. I just love it. And I love that the women's race was on Saturday and the men's race was on Sunday, because although having the women's race finish right after the men's race, like Flanders did, the viewing numbers were huge, and it was really great for the sport, the people on the side of the road and everything. But having it broken into two pieces meant that the women really got all the attention on Saturday. I mean, all eyes were on the women's race. And I think it was Velo News said that their page views on Saturday were more than the men's Paris-Roubaix from last year. Clearly, there's enough attention growing on the women's side of the sport where having it on two separate days doesn't make that big of an impact on how many people are watching the race. And I think I am curious to see this coming week as the viewer numbers are released, like how many people watch the women's race, because I thought it was great that it was on two separate days.
Yeah, and there was a lot of crowd out watching the women's race too. Like, it looked great on TV to have so many people along the sectors, and then that velodrome was pretty packed. Like, we all shared that same feeling of goosebumps watching Elisa ride into that. That was so cool. So you can only imagine what it would have been like for her.
There was a whole corner of like Italian fans.
Yeah.
Which was, they were going crazy.
There's
obviously.
like one photo that I pulled from the Grubers that was Elisa. It was like a long shot, and you could just see like a massive Italian flag in the background, and it was great. But the velodrome was full.
Yeah, there were some good photos.
This race does not disappoint when it comes to photos and just like epic images and stuff.
I think it is the one finish though, like, and particularly if you've raced a bike on any level, like if you put yourself in that person's shoes. I don't know, Gracie's ridden on that velodrome. Amy, have you ridden around it or just seen it?
I've stood inside it.
Yeah, it's just like, obviously when you
I might have.
when you go there and you ride it on your own, like, it's special. But then when you see it on TV with the crowds, like, if you just think to yourself, imagine like being that rider. Riding in solo is just so special. It's cool when like a small group comes in, like with Matt Heyman a few years ago, but just when they come in solo, it's just like even more epic. I don't know.
For
Yeah,
sure.
still.
And like we got the extended TV coverage this year, which was
90K,
I mean,
almost?
maybe,
No.
yeah, we saw all of the cobbled sectors. So
Yeah.
we saw basically the entire race. The only thing we missed were those circuits in Denine and the breakaway, the first break of 5 going up the road. But the extended TV coverage of a race like this, I mean, women's cycling is definitely on the rise. There's good things happening.
I would love, like, a dream for me would be to have Gracie fly over next year, and then the 4 of us on the ground.
Gracie's got to commentate. Gracie's holding down the commentary part of this race, making it bearable to watch.
Can't they just let it go for 1 week? And actually, as well, on that point, if you're listening, UCI, can you please bring back that week where it's like Flanders-Roubaix?
Oh, that was only
They
because
will.
of that was just because of the French elections.
Okay,
So
good.
next week we'll have Holy Week again, Flanders-Roubaix.
Next week, awesome.
Is it always Easter? I feel like I missed out on some valuable.
We're doing
chocolate.
it again next week. No.
It was Easter, Amy, or Debbie, yes.
Debbie just wants the chocolate. Don't need to waste my time walking along the dirty roads. Gosh.
I've seen the chocolate eggs, like. And
And Easter is on Flanders.
Normally,
That's why
yeah.
this-
Okay.
Because we would, I think, when was it? 2016, I bought everyone chocolate, and I reckon 3 riders actually ate it. Maybe 2.
Yeah, you and I cleaned up.
Yeah.
after us.
Chrissy and I ate like 6 or 7 Link bunnies.
Well, yeah, awesome race. I don't think there's much more to say, except that I can't wait for next year.
And we still have one really cool spring classic left. Flèche Wallonne has never been a fave of mine. I do love the sprint up that wall, but I really like Liège-Bastogne-Liège. I think that's a great race.
Agreed. I loved Liège-Bastogne-Liège in 2020 when Lizzie Deignan won, and like all the leaves were on the ground, and it was just, oh my gosh, it was.
And Grace
so
was chasing
exciting.
her?
Grace, Oh, Grace had such
that
a
was
good race that day. Yeah. So really looking forward to Liège-Bastogne-Liège. That is on Sunday. Flèche Wallonne is on Wednesday.
And then
We
that's
could
the end of it.
And then that's it. That's the spring
I'm sad.
done and dusted.
Yeah.
And then we
I
get
was
to
always
sleep.
so sad.
Yeah.
I was always so
No.
sad as a rider when spring's over, and now I'm still sad as a
No.
spectator.
May is a weird month. You feel like a bit disjointed, like what's next?
Yeah, except this May we have multiple stage races because of the new races. So there's no sleep for us.
Nope.
Maybe-
Well,
that's
actually,
not you.
literally, Abby. Yeah.
There's really no sleep for me. Should we do a little preview of Liège-Bastogne-Liège? I haven't looked at the course yet, and for anyone listening who's curious about that, I will do a preview that will be out on Wednesday. But I feel like we could make some picks, name some riders. I think I've already named my favorite, and that's Elisa Longa-Borghini. But I mean, Cavalli, the way that she's riding right now, Sile will be back in
Chapman?
the races by that point. Brody Chapman won a race yesterday.
Yep.
She did.
French Cup. Yep.
Yeah.
So she's on good form, and if you're listening, Director Sportive, you know, you need to play that card maybe. I thought Cassia was. I think she's coming into really good form too.
She was really, really strong at Brabant's Appeal. Like Brabant's Appeal was, we didn't even touch Brabant's Appeal because there was so much to talk about for Paris-Roubaix, but Brabant's Appeal was an awesome race on Wednesday. It was so exciting. And there was a couple riders who did Brabant's and didn't do Paris-Roubaix that will be going into the last two spring classics, the Ardennes, just flying. And I think Kasia is one of them. I think she showed at Brabant's Appeal that she's coming into form, but she's also getting a little bit better at timing those moves. And so I'm hoping that, especially for Liège-Bastogne-Liège, that means that she's going to be up there.
Yep, I think Leanne Lippert and Juliette Labrousse will probably have good rides as well. A dark horse, Lizzie Holden, to go in a move, I think. She's been riding really well, so we have to give, I think she's been a standout performer for Nicole Wahoo.
Of course, we have some big favourites coming back, Annemiek van Vleuten and Demi Vollering.
Yeah, those two will be back, and Demi especially. I'm super curious to see how she goes. Like she was
strong,
flying at Brabant's. Yeah, she really raced on feel and rode an incredibly smart race. So I'm excited to see how she goes, and especially as the defending champion of Liège-Bastogne-Liège, without having Anna van der Breggen to do a 10-kilometer long lead out for her. Interested to see how that goes. And
speaking of, who's the pick for SD Works as leader?
I feel like it would be Demi. I think at this point they
Has to
would
be.
turn.
Why did I blank that she is with SD Works? I was like going, who are they going to run?
Because she's not raced a ton this year.
No, it would
She's
be
only-
her,
She's only
definitely.
done 3 races, I think, so far this year. 4 races. She's
Second at
4
Het
races.
Nieuwsblad.
Yeah. And then she did Strada, and then she did Flanders, and
She's done 5 races. Omloop, Strada, Flanders, Amstel, and Brabant's Appeal.
I think, I don't know, we're not really talking about Flesh, but you know how Flesh is just such a specific finish to a certain type of a rider. Like, it's always the same when you look at the results every year.
Well, yeah,
Well,
They
it's
mix
7
one person
years.
for
It's only
7
been one
years.
person.
But, like, in terms of the
That's
podium...
what's going to
the
make
top
it
5,
interesting, because it will be
Yeah.
someone else. It doesn't matter who it is.
Yeah. But it's always, like, roughly the same riders up there. And, like, Ashley Moolman has been going pretty good, and she's podiumed at Flèche Wallonne. It's a sort of finish that suits her. You've got Cecile as well, that suits her. Cassia has been on that podium multiple times. But, I mean, Demi, it could be, you know, staying within SD Works.
I feel like the out-and-out favorite for Flèche Wallonne is Van Vleuten because of the finish. But
For sure.
I'm curious because she she usually on a shorter climb, like on any climb, she can just ride away. The road goes uphill, she can ride away. I'm really curious if she can ride away on the flesh climb, or if all of our theories about her this year and the peloton just kind of matching her level are gonna come true at flesh. But I think she's the out and out favorite, just based on the way that race finishes.
Yep.
Anyway, that's it. We'll call it a day. That's our podcast. Thank you so much for listening. If you're riding on Zwift, I hope you had a great ride with us today. One of us might be in the ride. Who knows? I tried to jump in one yesterday. It's getting a little bit harder for me to ride a bike at the moment, but still managing it. Thanks to Zwift. But yeah, thank you so much for listening. We'll be back next week.